Hello students, myself Dr. Sucharita Bhattacharya, Associate Professor of Physics from Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata, is welcoming you all in my lecture series on classical optics for Physics 1. That means it is valid for first year BTech course and the streams under consideration are computer science and engineering, information technology and food technology. Today I am starting with lecture 1 on this new lecture series on classical optics. Now, let us take a look at the syllabus and the course in detail a little bit. It is the physics paper 1 and the paper code is PH101. Paper code is PH101. Total contact is 3 lecture per week and the credit allocated is 3. Total number of lectures for the entire Physics 1 course, that is PH101, is 36 lectures. Now, today I am starting with module 2 on classical optics, where total number of lectures allocated 8. Now, in module 2, there are two sub-modules. One is 2.01, that is interference of light. In interference of light, we will discuss Huygens principle, superposition of waves, conditions of sustained interference, Newton's ring, and engineering applications, its engineering applications and the numerical problems. Total number of lectures allocated here is 3. Now, in submodule 2.02, we will discuss diffraction of light in the form of Fresnel and Fraunhofer class, Fraunhofer diffraction of a single slit, multi-slits, that is multiple slits, intensity distributions, missing order, Rayleigh criterion, and resolving power of grating and microscope, and related numerical problems. The total number of lectures allocated there are 5. That means in this total module 2, there are 2 submodules in the form of interference of light and diffraction of light insofar as classical optics part is concerned. Definitely today we will start with 2.01. Now before going to that part, let us first take the course objective. Now the aim of this course is to provide an adequate exposure to develop insights of classical physical optics and its principles along with the possible applications. The acquaintance of these principles would help budding engineers like you to understand the working of corresponding tools and techniques used in the industry to provide the necessary foundations for inculcating innovative approaches in optics. It also gives necessary exposure to the practical aspects, which is an essential component for classical optical science and technology. So far as the course outcome is concerned, you students, after completion of this course, will be able to understand and compare the phenomena of interference and diffraction. You can apply the knowledge of superposition principle in various interference and diffraction phenomena in areas of single wavefront and two wavefront. You can analyze Newton's ring phenomenon, grating as many slit systems. You can also investigate the resolving power of optical systems like microscope and grating. Now, the books which you require to study this part, that is the classical optics. There are a lot of books. The books under consideration here is Textbook of Light by K.G. Mojumdar and D. Ghosh, very standard book. A Textbook of Light, Brijlal and Subramaniam. Then Modern Optics by A.D. Gupta. It is also a very, very good book. Optics by Ajay Ghatak. Optics by Heck. Optics by R.K. Kaur, and the Principles of Optics, D.K. Mathur, very, very standard good book. And Optics by Jenkins and White, a very, very standard, universally valid or applicable book here. In addition to this classical optics, you can concentrate on the classical optics chapter of general textbook in the form of engineering physics by different publishers. For the detail of the syllabus and the book, you can take a look at our website www.gnit.ac.in syllabus. Now let us start our 2 days session. I already mentioned that in the interference of light with which we are starting today, it is submodule 2.01 where total number of lectures allocated 3. Now in our 2 days lesson, that is the first lecture, we will start with introduction, then wave front, then Huygens principle, superposition of waves, and Young's double slit experiment. Naturally, the questions to be addressed in today's lesson is like that. What is wave front? Next, we will go for what about Huygens principle? Then we will discuss superposition of waves as well as Young's double slit experiment. Then we will go for constructive and destructive interference. And finally, the resultant intensity of Young's double slit experiment, which is the example of superposition of waves. Okay. Now, interference, we are starting with introduction, and definitely the prerequisite is 12th standard knowledge of physical optics. You all students have completed your 12th standard, so there you got some idea about the physical optics, and that is the prerequisite of this chapter. Now, according to the geometrical optics, you students all know that geometrical optics confirms the rectilinear propagation of light. But physical optical phenomena like interference, diffraction, polarization raises the question regarding the nature of light for the first time. It was the wave theory which confirms that light is a form of wave. Naturally, our next fact to know is what about wave theory. You students are to some extent familiar with wave theory. It was given by maximally by Huygens. His contribution is maximum there, though with Huygens, Young and Fresnel also contributed. But since the contribution of Huygens is maximum, so it is in general termed as Huygens wave theory. Now the first statement, what I am showing here, it is very much known to all of you, that light like sound is regarded as a wave motion. Light like sound is regarded as a wave motion when a disturbance is created at any point in an optical medium. Disturbance spreads out in the form of waves consisting of alternate crests and troughs in all directions. Now, light is a wave motion, you all know. Now, when a disturbance is created means, say you switch on the light in a medium. What will happen? The particles of the medium will get energy from the light and they start vibrating. Naturally, the locus of all particles vibrating in the same phase at an instant is called the wave front of the wave. And it is the movement of the wave front which shows how light energy travels from one place in a medium to other. So what I told, that if light is switched on, particles of the medium will get energy from that light and they start vibrating. Definitely the locus of all particles, very, very important statement which is given here. Locus of all particles vibrating in the same phase. What about phase? The particles undergoing vibratory motion, for them phase means the state of motion and state of displacement. That means whether the particle at all moving or not, that is it at rest or it is moving. If it is moving, then where is the particle at some particular instant, that is represented by phase. So locus of all particles vibrating in the same phase at an instant is termed as wavefront of the wave. It is the movement of the wavefront which show how light energy travels from one place in a medium to other. We will clarify this point with the help of some figures, but before that, let us complete the next statement, next part of the wave theory statement. Each point on a progressing wavefront acts as a source of secondary spherical wavefronts or wavelets. Mostly we are using the point source. That's why I'm talking about the spherical wavefront or wavelet. If the source is not point source, definitely its shape will change. Accordingly, we will change our statement. The position and shape of the new wavefront at later instant can be obtained by drawing a surface enveloping these secondary wavelets. I am repeating from the last line of the second statement. It is the movement of the wavefront which shows how light energy travels from one place in a medium to other. Each point on a progressing wavefront acts as a source of secondary wavelets or wavefronts. The position and shape of the new wavefront at later instant can be obtained by drawing a surface enveloping these secondary wavelets. Now let us take a look at the figure to get an idea about the wavefront. Let us consider a point source kept in a homogeneous and isotropic medium like free space, or practically you can consider air. Now, homogeneous means the density is same on all directions, and isotropic means the optical properties are same. That means C, the velocity of light is always considered to be 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second for all waves coming out of the point source in all directions, consisting of alternating crests and troughs as a wave, forming the wave. So, if you consider a point source kept in a homogeneous and isotropic medium, from this point source, the waves will come out and move in the forward direction with velocity of light c consisting of alternating crests and troughs. Now, locus of all particles vibrating in same phase means either at crest or at trough. Crest means the position of maximum displacement. Trough means the position of minimum displacement. Now, this is one wave is shown here. Similarly, on all sides, we have large number of waves which are moving like this. Now, locus of all particles vibrating in same phase. Let at time t, all the particles are on a crest. Say this one. Similarly, here the wave will come out. There will be one crest at this point. Here will be one crest at this point. Here will be another crest at this point. That means locus of all particles vibrating in same phase forms the wavefront, which is spherical in shape for a point source kept in a homogeneous and isotropic medium. In two dimension, it will appear as circular, obviously, but in three dimension, it will be spherical in shape. Now, if you consider some later instant, say the position is at some trough on the waves. Here you are getting trough. Next wave, if you consider in this direction, there will be another trough, there will be another trough, there will be another trough of different waves, because all of them are starting from point source at same time and all are moving with same velocity c. So at same time instant, all the waves must reach simultaneously either at crest or at trough. Now locus of all particles vibrating in same phase. Now on trough, it is again a circle in two dimension. That means sphere in three dimension. So if we move this way, we will find the wavefront is advancing in the forward direction one after another, and they are spherical in shape for a point source kept in a homogeneous and isotropic medium. Now, if we consider the time instant when we will look at the wavefront, that is very, very large. Say 1,000 times the time here, say t, 1,000 t. What about the shape of the wavefront? Let us take a look. From point source, if you move at large distances, what you will find? The wavefront, the spheres, these will be spheres of very, very large radius of curvature. So what about the curvature? Curvature will be very small because curvature is inverse of radius of curvature. So as you go outward at large instance, definitely the spheres or the spherical wavefront, what you will get, they are a very large radius of curvature. So their curvatures will go on decreasing. And at very large distance from this point source, you will find curvature is almost not present there, almost zero curvature, because at very large distance radius of curvature will be infinitely large. So curvature will be negligibly small and the corresponding wavefront almost appear as plane wavefront. Corresponding wavefront will almost appear as plane wavefront. That means point source but at very large distance. That's why the wavefront is appearing as nearly plane. Actually, light from the sun reaches the surface of the earth in plane wavefront. Light from the sun reaches the surface of the earth in plane wavefront because of this reason. Okay. Now, in place of a point source, let us consider a linearly extended source. So, what about the shape of the wavefront? Waves will come out from this linear source on all sides. Here you are getting the two-dimensional. Now, on both sides, you will get three-dimensional view. So, if the locus of all points are connected on all sides, what we will find? The cylindrical envelope we will get. Naturally, the corresponding wavefront will be cylindrical wavefront. So, line source, it will give you the cylindrical wavefront. Point source at small distance gives you spherical wavefront, but point source at very large distance gives you the nearly plane wavefront, whereas the line source gives you the cylindrical wavefront. That means, depending upon the conditions, wavefronts assume different shapes. Okay. Let us now come to the third statement of the wave theory, that each point on a progressing wavefront acts as a source of secondary spherical wavefronts or wavelets. The position and shape of the new wavefront at later instant can be obtained by drawing a surface enveloping these secondary wavelets. So this is one progressing wavefront. You can consider each and every point on this progressing wavefront as source of secondary spherical wavefront or wavelet, like this one. That means from this point, waves will come out in the form of crest and trough in all directions. Now, you connect them, what you will find? You will find this spherical wavefront. It is the locus. The locus will give you the spheres. Okay. Now, the position and shape of the next wavefront. How to get? By enveloping the secondary wavefronts or wavelets. We are enveloping the secondary wavefronts or wavelets to get the position of next wavefront. Similarly, at the latter instant, you can consider each and every point of this secondary wavelet as the source of secondary, each and every point of this new wavefront is considered as source of secondary wavelets for the later instant. That means each and every point here. What you will get? You will get again the secondary wavelets, the spherical one, and then envelope, you just envelope them with a surface, you will get the position of next wavefront. That means by choosing each and every point of a progressing wavefront as source of secondary spherical wavefront or wavelet, we can get the new position of the new wavefront by enveloping the surface of this secondary wavefront or wavelet. I hope the things you have done definitely to some extent in the 12th standard, but today we are going in some little detail because now you are in the BTech first year. Okay. Now, before moving to principle of superposition and Young's double slit experiment, let us just recapitulate the relationship between path difference and phase difference, without which we cannot move in this wave theory and the interference pattern. Now just take a look. What does it represent? This is a complete cycle of a wave. What about the corresponding angle? That is pi plus pi, so 2 pi. Now look here. This is the separation between crest to crest. This is the separation between trough to trough. Similarly, if you continue this way, you will get separation between crest to crest. Now, according to the definition of wavelength, we know that it represents the separation, we can say, or the distance, we can say, between two consecutive crest or trough. The separation between consecutive crest or trough represent the wavelength. So basically this is here one wavelength which corresponds to phase difference 2 pi. So if d, that means we can say that lambda path difference. Lambda path difference corresponds to phase difference 2 pi. So any unknown path difference d represent the phase difference as 2 pi by lambda into d. So I am repeating it, that lambda path difference. What is lambda? The wavelength. Separation between consecutive crest or trough. That means one complete cycle you are considering, which corresponds to 360-degree phase difference, that is 2 pi. So lambda path difference corresponds to 2 pi phase difference. So any unknown d path difference corresponds to phase difference delta equal to 2 pi by lambda into d. Okay. Now let us move to the all important principle of superposition. So far we have considered everything in terms of one wave state. Now, in place of one wave, if in a medium you have two or more waves which are simultaneously present and pass through a point of the medium, then what about the resultant displacement at any instant at that point? It is equal to the algebraic sum of the displacements due to the individual waves, provided the displacements are small. Say for example, at any point in a medium, due to the presence of one wave, the displacement of a particle at any instant is say y1. Similarly, the displacement of that particle due to the presence of second wave for the same time, let the displacement is y2. So y1 and y2 are the displacements which a particle suffer due to the presence of two waves, 1 and 2 individually. Now, if both the waves are present simultaneously to disturb that particle for the same time t, what about its resultant displacement? That is given by y equal to y1 plus minus y2. That means algebraic sum of the displacements due to individual waves. When it will be added up? When both the displacements are in same phase. That means crest to crest or trough to trough. What about the net result? That is the reinforcement. So the displacements, net displacements will increase. Y equal to y1 plus y2. When it will be minus? If both the displacements are in the opposite phase, that means one's crest is combining with others trough and vice versa. That means waves are meeting in opposite phase. So y equal to y1 minus y2. What about the net result? That is the cancellation or neutralization. So What about the statement of principle of superposition? It states that if two or more waves simultaneously pass to a point of a medium, the resultant displacement at any instant at that point is equal to the algebraic sum of the displacements due to the individual waves, provided the displacements are small. Obviously, it is a condition that displacements must be small enough so that it happens. Now, look at in the region of superposition, what is happening? Either you are getting reinforcement or you are getting neutralization. That means in the region of superposition, there is a modification in amplitude and obviously in intensity, because intensity is square of amplitude of the resultant wave, which is termed as the phenomenon of interference of the waves. So, in the region of superposition, there is a modification in amplitude and intensity of the resultant wave, which is termed as interference of the waves. That means interfere to poke your nose. So, here one was moving, other was moving, then they are reinforcing because they are in same phase. That means interference one, and here they are moving out of phase, so they are neutralizing each other. It is again interference, but this is the second type. Okay, now this principle of superposition, using this principle of superposition, it was Thomas Young who conducted his famous double slit experiment way back in 1801 to analyze the phenomenon of interference in very detail, which is even used nowadays with the same importance even in the detection of gravitational waves. You people know that. Probably you have heard it, that the phenomenon of interference is used in the explanation of gravitational waves too. Okay. Now, what about Young's double slit experiment? Let us now take a look. Basically, the three cardboards are taken here. They are placed parallel to each other with some separation in between them. In cardboard 1, a single slit S is kept. In cardboard 2, two similar slits S1 and S2 are placed so that with respect to S, their separations are same. That means SS1 equal to SS2. And the third cardboard is used here as screen. Now, preferably a monochromatic light source. It may be polychromatic, but preferably a monochromatic light source is kept on the left of the first slit S. So, light from that source is falling on the slit S. And as soon as it occupies the plane of the slit, each and every point in the plane of the waves will be considered as sources of secondary waves consisting of alternate crests and troughs. They are moving in the forward direction with alternate crests and troughs. In two dimension, the continuous circular arc I am considering as the crest, and the dashed circular arcs I am considering as trough. You may go other way, no problem. Okay. Now, S1 and S2 are kept equidistant with respect to S, and we all know that light travels with same velocity c. So, after some time, S1 and S2, the two slits will be occupied by these advancing secondary waves at the same instant of time or phase, and naturally they will start emitting their own wave pattern simultaneously. With respect to S1, this is the wavefronts you are getting. The secondary one, they will start emitting as if S1 is a source. Similarly, from S2, we will get its own wave pattern. And in this region between the second cardboard and the third cardboard, they will superpose or interfere to produce the final interference pattern, which will be recorded, which is recorded on the screen. Before going to that part, about one thing we have to be careful that here S1 and S2 is regarded as two independent sources but derived from the same single source S. S1 and S2 regarded as two independent sources but derived from the same single source S. Be careful at this point, and SS1 equal to SS2. Now, what we will find on the screen? It will be found on the screen that there are alternate regions of bright and dark bands of equal width known as interference fringes. The screen is found to be intersected by alternate regions of bright and dark bands of equal width known as interference fringes. Why it will happen so? Just take a look. At these points, you just take a look. The crest of S1 and crest of S2 is superposing. At this point, trough of S1 and trough of S2 superposing. At this point, again, crest of S1 is superposing with the crest of S2. At this point, the two troughs are superposing. That means at all these points along this line, two set of wavefronts are meeting in same phase. So according to principle of superposition, what about the resultant amplitude along this line? Amplitude is nothing but maximum value of displacement. So it will be y equal to y1 plus y2. Since we are considering S1 and S2 as two similar sources and which is occupied by the light from one source, so you can take the amplitude to be exactly equal, say A. Then what about the resultant amplitude along this line? Obviously, A plus A, that is 2A. So what should be the intensity? From physical point of view, you can give that it will be 2A whole square. Okay. So along this line, you will expect the maximum intensity because amplitude is added up. And amplitude is nothing but maximum value of displacement, and intensity is square of amplitude. Whereas if you look at these lines, say here or here, you will find S1's crest is superposing with S2's trough, or S1's trough is superposing with S2's crest. Similarly here, that means at this point, along this line and along this line at different points, two set of wave fronts, one from S1, other from S2, are meeting in opposite phase. That means they are neutralizing each other's effect. The resultant amplitude will be y equal to y1 minus y2 according to the principle of superposition. And if the amplitudes are exactly same, we will get A minus A, the amplitudes are same. A minus A means 0. So along these lines on the screen, you will expect the 0 intensity or minima if a little bit difference in amplitudes are there. So here you will get maxima, here you will get minima. Again, next point you will get maxima. Here, next point you will get maxima. And this way it will take place. Now, observation so in nutshell is like that. As a result of the superposition of the waves, interference will take place and intensity of light on the screen changes, producing alternate bright and dark bands of equal width known as interference fringes parallel to the slit. Just take a look at the screen how it will appear. Alternate bright and dark, bright and dark, bright and dark. These regions of equal width known as interference fringes we will expect on the screen. Now, what about the inferences? I already have mentioned through the diagram. Let us just take the statement. At points where two waves from S1 and S2 meet in same phase, the resultant amplitude, according to the principle of superposition, increases, producing maximum intensity. in the form of constructive interference. That means when two set of wavefronts are meeting in same phase, you will observe the constructive interference, and that's why you will get maximum there, because it is a constructive way of superposition of two waves. Okay. On the other hand, at points where they meet in opposite phase, that means one's crest and other trough or vice versa, the resultant amplitude neutralizes each other's effect, producing minimum intensity in the form of obviously destructive interference. So at the positions of the minimum, one's maximum, that means one's crest is superposing with others trough and vice versa. That means they are neutralizing each other's effect. If the amplitudes are exactly same, so what you will expect? Y1 minus Y2, say A minus A equal to 0. So you will get minimum there, isn't that? So let us take a look here. Now, this is one superposing wave, say coming from the first source S1 in the form of Y1, the displacement. This is the second superposing wave coming from the source S2 in our case. Now look at, they are meeting in same phase. So crest to crest, trough to trough. Okay. So we will expect constructive interference, and the resultant wave, take a look, it is reinforced. Resultant wave reinforced. So two are added, and here also they are added, but in the opposite direction. So we are getting alternating positions of maximum and minimum, and the resultant wave, obviously maximum, I can't say this is minimum, because both are maximum but in the opposite directions. Both are maximum, here it is not minimum, both are maximum in the opposite direction. This is the case of amplitude. When you are talking about the intensity, mod of amplitude square you will get, so all will go up and you will get the maximum intensity. All will go up and you will get the maximum intensity. But look at here. So here, superposing waves, how they are working. So this is say due to S1, coming from S1. So you are getting crest trough this way. And this is the another superposing wave coming from source S2. How they are meeting? Just in opposite phase. With crest you are getting trough. With trough you are getting crest. Again with crest you are getting trough, and so on. That means what about the resultant wave? You are getting the neutralization of amplitude with respect to each other. So what about the resultant intensity? Obviously, it will be minimum. If the amplitudes are exactly same, then it will be zero intensity, and the corresponding interference is called destructive one. Now, this type of the fringe pattern which we are getting, fringe means the positions of equal bands, we are equal bandwidths, we are getting what as a whole. This pattern is called the fringe pattern. These fringes are appearing because of interference only. How can you understand? If you just cover either of the two slits, that means in place of S1, in case of S1, S2, if you cover either S1 or S2, then what you will find? Fringes will disappear and it will produce the uniform illumination. If either of the two interfering sources are covered, then you will find no fringe pattern. In place of that, uniform illumination will be obtained because of the light coming from one slit, that is source only. Okay. Now, let us come to the analytical treatment of interference. So, for analytical treatment of interference, we are taking a cross-sectional view. We are taking a cross-sectional view of this figure. Say, this is S1 and the S2, and this is the screen on which they will superpose to give their final resultant intensity. They will superpose here, but on the screen, they will produce the final intensity pattern in the form of interference. Let us consider any point P on the screen which is taken. Definitely the distance from S1 to P is less than the distance from S2 to P. Okay. Let the distance from S1 to P is X and the distance from S2 to P is say X plus D. It is more. Then what about D? D is the path difference of the point P with respect to S1 and S2. Small d is the path difference of the point P with respect to S1 and S2. Now, S1 and S2 preferably considered to be monochromatic sources of wavelength lambda, and we are considering the waves to start from the sources in phase. Obviously, SS1 equal to SS2, so they are in same phase. So waves will start from them at the same instant of time or phase, and they get superimposed at a point say P on the screen. Now, if the waves coming from S1 and S2 produces displacement say Y1 and Y2 at P at an instant T, then you can write Y1, you can express Y1, the displacement due to the wave coming from S1 at P as A sine 2 pi by lambda into Ct minus X, the equation of a progressive wave where A is the amplitude, lambda is the wavelength, c is the velocity of light, t is the time, and x is the distance S1p. Similarly, from S2, if y2 is the displacement at p, it is written as a sine 2 pi by lambda Ct minus x plus d, because distance from S to p is x plus d, where d is the path difference of the point p from S1 and S2. I already mentioned. Now, the resultant displacement at P, obviously from principle of superposition at an instant T, both are reaching at P. So, what about the resultant displacement at P? Y equal to Y1 plus Y2. Y1 plus Y2, A is the common factor you can take outside, then it is sine C plus sine D. So, what about the net result? 2 times sine 2 pi by lambda Ct minus x plus d by 2 into cos pi d by lambda. That means this is very, very easy, sine C plus sine D formulation, and you are getting here the two terms. Just take a look. 2a cos pi d by lambda, this is one term, and sine 2 pi by lambda Ct minus x plus d by 2, this is another term. Now here, no time is present, and here time factor is present, just like the basic form of y1 and y2. That was the amplitude part, no time factor present. This is the time dependent part. Similarly, here amplitude and the time dependent part. Now look at the resultant wave. Obviously, this is the amplitude part, 2a cos pi d by lambda, and this is the time dependent part. That means the form of the wave remains same. The resultant displacement has the same wave form as the original one. Okay. But what about the amplitude part? Take a look, very, very important. The amplitude of the resultant wave is 2a cos pi d by lambda, which is a changing one, because this d, the path difference of the point P with respect to S1 and S2 may vary, because this point P can be taken here, 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 anywhere. Naturally, D is variable. But in place of superposing waves, the amplitudes were constant A and A. So, very, very important conclusion, that amplitude is modified to 2A cos pi d by lambda, a changing one, in place of A, the constant one. And because of that, what is happening? In the intensity distribution pattern, what we will get, the amplitude of the resultant wave is like that. So what about the intensity? The resultant intensity will be 4a square cos square pi d by lambda. 4a square cos square pi d by lambda. Here it is a variable part. here it is the 4a square, the constant part. Obviously, it is the trigonometric function in cos square whose maximum value can be 1. So, in that case, you can expect I maximum as 4a square and its minimum value is 0. So, in that case, you will expect I minimum to be 0. Okay. That means in our next class, we will consider in detail where to get or how to get I max and I min depending upon the factor to have this term to give maximum and minimum in either case. Till then, thank you, my dear students. Stay safe, stay healthy. Okay.